Everyone. I think we have everything working fluently now. Today, of course, is our first webinar of 2018. Today, of course, is January 11th, 2018. So again, welcome to the webinar today. Today, I'm going to try to keep it relatively short. Go through some of the monthly charts, the longer term charts that we look at, and then we'll focus in on the shorter term, and then a couple of teaching exercises towards the end. But anyway, here's the S&P 500. Now, again, I've been kind of harping on this situation. We are above the upper band on the monthly chart, about, 250 points above it. Upper band is 2508. Now, when we scale down to the weekly chart, we see that the upper band is 2748. As of yesterday, we're at 2751. So we are right at the upper band on the weekly. On the daily, upper band is 2753. So we're just underneath that. So again, this market has been exhibiting just incredible strength. And again, we know that because of where price is trading in relationship to the upper band. We scale down to the monthly chart of the Dow, same situation as the S&P 500, upper band roughly 22,000. The other day we closed at 25.4. So again, we're well above it. Here's the composite, 63.44 upper band. We closed at 71.63. And then again, here we look at the gold, the actual metal itself. The situation with gold is it's really been in this long-term, kind of a couple of year consolidation. So at this point, what we really need to do is to see which way it's going to break. Okay, I feel if it takes out the upper channel, it's probably going to retest the upper band. If it breaks, it'll probably retest the mid band, which is about 812. So again, this is a market that, quite frankly, isn't really all that terribly exciting at this moment. Now we look at oil. This is the spot price. And again, what I've been talking about is the fact that, would it break through the mid-band? Mid-band is 56. As you can see from this chart now, we are above the mid-band. All right, which tells me that there's a possibility that oil could test the upper band, which is 132. And then we look at Apple. Apple, upper band 153. We closed at 174.33. So again, well above the upper band on Apple as well. So that's another interesting phenomenon. Again, we're seeing a lot of stocks where just tremendous strength is being exhibited. And again, we don't need to measure this with a multitude of different indicators. All we really need to do is to look at that extreme Bollinger Band setting to know if the stock is in fact, or the market is overbought. Now, the problem with this is obviously as the market continues higher, all right, the opportunity in long positions are fairly limited. All right. Ideally, what we want to be doing is buying towards the lower band, okay, or after a pullback. All right, and that opportunity right now isn't really available. So that's why I've been very cautious right now. The other situation is this. If you go back to last February when we had a major long-term bottom in the market, you'll see there were a lot of stocks that set up. Okay, and actually, and I'm going to point it out on Apple here, because we bottomed in Apple somewhere around in that area. Okay, the bottom last February was bottom last year was in February of 2016, and what was kind of interesting is that there were a number of stocks that had bottomed at that point. You don't really see it clearly and vividly here on the weekly chart of Apple, but during this consolidation phase, Apple was oversold on a short-term basis. When I say short-term, on the daily chart. So if you think about it, Apple since that time has run about, I don't know, 70, almost 80% higher based upon that oversold condition. Okay. And by the way, there's the major bottom back in '09. So if you look at it, Apple bottomed at $10 back on the major generational bottom and hit a high of 177. So that's a heck of a return. All right, short term. Now we start looking at the shorter term charts. Here's the S&P 500. Okay, and here are our critical levels at the moment. 2734.40 is the line we just took out. And what I'm anticipating is that 2812 gets hit. All right, that to me is the ultimate objective for this market. To confirm that move up there, we need two closes above 2753.90. We'll look at the market live after I finish the PowerPoint. Here's the 30-minute chart. You can see very succinctly that the 30 is in an uptrend. By the way, I pulled all these charts off as of the close on the 9th. Okay, that's why it doesn't reflect any activity from yesterday. But here's the thing that's very interesting. We look at this particular formation. Here's the 60 in an uptrend. Here's the 30 in an uptrend. You know, the point here is when you have this situation, you want to continue to trade to the long side. Okay, I don't recommend trying to short, okay, above the upper bands. You know, my recommendation is to always, how do I say it, target the termination of the pullback. And we can do that pretty simply, by the way, by just simply look at the Williams. We want to see this Williams get below -80. And in this run, that happened 1, 2, 3 times. All right, and then finally, the S&P broke out and took out the 2734 line and actually went up to the next upside confirming line. Here's the VIX, major level 1094 and 938, actually took out 938, which is something that I've been kind of calling for. But if you notice, it really didn't get well below 938. Only got to just about 9, and then it reversed. So again, it's something we have to be cognizant of because every time the VIX gets down there, it tends to reverse and head back up. The 899 blue line here is the next downside confirming line. Okay, and you can see what happened here a couple days back. The VIX hit it and reversed. Now we move to the Qs. 162.5 was the target. It was achieved. 160.94 should be support. But again, uptrend formation. We go to the 30, uptrend formation. And again, here's the oversold conditions on the Qs. So, you know, say you bought in here, well, you had to kind of wait and sit through the slop until the up move continued. But, you know, here's a little trick that I like using, by the way. You can see over here, the Qs took out the upper band. Now, we know when an instrument takes out the upper band, it sets up a couple of scenarios and probabilities for us. I mean, the first probability is that we expect a retest of the upper band, okay, after it finds support. Now, the question is, where would support come in? Now, if you look at this chart, right, here was the first time the Qs got oversold. Hang on one sec. Right here. All right, so it's about 157 area. Bounced up to about 158. Then it ultimately dropped to 155.70 before the up move continued. But here's the question. I mean, or here's the situation. Here's the high. All right. This was the third day after the high. And usually what I'm looking for is at least a reversal in a cycle of 4. So what do I mean by that? Well, 3 days is a little too fast for this thing to have bottomed. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, this would be the 4th day. Here it was overbought, so you wouldn't have initiated a long. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the next 4th day, roughly in here. And then here's where it ultimately bottomed with the gap up. So really from the high, it basically pulled back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days. Okay. And the point here is this, that usually it takes a while for, the bottom to start to come in, even in an uptrend. But again, the point here is this. The other point here is this. Had you initiated along here or perhaps here, you simply had to kind of wait and hold the position until it did finally reverse. Now here's the IWM, 156.25 is the target. Downside level is, the next support line is 153.13, and then strong support at 150. TLT, okay, it's interesting. The TLT hit 128.13, sold off, okay. Actually came right down to the upside confirming line here, which is 123.83, and that's where it pulled back to yesterday, all right? And it's trying to hold support of that line. Now, I didn't look at the TLT this morning to see if it broke under that level. But quite frankly, if it does break through it, it's going to go to 123.44. Here's the FXY. Again, I'm going to go through that quickly. GLD, 125 is the support line. Okay, that's what it's been holding as of late. So right now, the GLD to me is at a very crucial juncture. If it holds the 124.5 level, I think it could run up to around 131. If it fails, I could see a move down to maybe 115. So regardless, is a pretty interesting scenario here, setting up on the GLD. The XLE. Okay, the XLE has been showing obviously some strength here. All right, now here's the weekly chart. You can see what's happened here. It's actually climbed back above the mid-band. All right, the 50 has actually crossed above the 200. Now, I would consider this to be in an uptrend once the 200 crosses above the 253, which is the mid-band. We look at the daily, that's already happened. Okay, we've moved into an uptrend on the daily chart. But again, look what's happened. We've gotten a little bit overbought, and we know that because it's now trading above the upper band on the daily. So the ideal situation at this point would be to see a pullback and, the XLE finds support for the next leg up. Here's the shorter term 60-minute chart. 75 was the objective. 73.44 is the next confirming line to the downside. And again, notice how on the 60, now the 200 is starting to spread from the 253, which means that it's beginning to show strength. Here's the 30. You can see a very well-defined uptrend on the 30 as well. Okay, separation between the 200 and the 253. Any questions? Let me see here. Okay, now I'm going to go into some shorter term calls, okay, because I had an email from a fellow member, and I thought this was kind of an interesting email. He said, as a learning experience, I'm interested in managing FCX and others like it. I am long-term bullish copper and its miners. When I bought FCX, I planned on holding it a long term and selling calls against it. I was hoping for about a 25% return the first year. We already are, but we are already over 30%. That does not matter. I've been wondering when the charts will give me a good signal that it's time to sell calls again. How do you assess the beginning of a consolidation or a pullback? Okay, first of all, when I'm looking to sell calls, what I'm generally looking to do is to receive at least 25 cents per week of option premium. And again, that's a general rule of thumb. So what does that mean? Well, if I'm selling a month out, then I'm trying to get at least $1 in premium. If I'm selling a weekly that expires next week, then I want at least 25 cents. But here's copper. This is a weekly chart of copper. Okay, you can see what's gone on here in copper. Right now, it's very close to crossing into an uptrend on the weekly chart. Notice how down here, we had the green D1 cross above the minus D1, okay, which tells us it's trending, and it's bullish trending. So it's really been trending since it found support around 250 down here. Now we look at Freeport, and let me go back to this. This was last May in 2017. So you can look here. I don't know what the price was of Freeport back in May, but you can see what's gone on here recently in Freeport. It was kind of in a consolidation phase, and it finally broke out, and it took off. It raced from about 13 up to almost 20. So a very nice move. Now, here's where it gets interesting, okay? You can see clearly how it's gotten above the upper band. All right, now, again, my expectation with these bands are very simple. I really am not inclined to initiate long positions above the upper bands, but I'm more inclined to start liquidating long positions, okay? Another way to look at it is when price gets above the upper band, you may want to consider maybe starting to sell calls again. And that was my advice to this particular member, okay? That's when you really want to start thinking about it. Now, we scale down to a 60-minute chart on Freeport. You can see here what's going on, okay? You can see how it took out the upper band, continued to ride higher, and then finally closed back within the upper band. And then over here on the right, what happened? Well, the MACD flipped negative, all right, as it was making new highs up here. So the ideal situation is when you start to see this is when it gets overbought, maybe that's when you initiate selling options against your position. And quite frankly, what I'll do even is I'll sell them in the money. I'll actually sell, maybe if the stock was up here hitting almost 20, I might have sold at 1950. Again, depending upon how much time value I could get. That's assuming I don't want to liquidate the stock. I now want to talk about this bottoming formation. Sorry, I'm kind of running through this pretty quickly because, again, you are privy to the PowerPoints. Now, here's the setup that I like, and this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking down here at this ADX line, the black line. And what I want to see happen is the ADX line heading up, peak out, and then start to head down. And that'll typically confirm that a bottom is forming in the stock. Now, a little nuance to this is the higher this peak, the better off or the more probable that a bottom is coming in. So you want to see it at least maybe exceeding 35, maybe 40, even higher. Now, in this particular stock, you can see it had broken below the lower band. Okay, so again, this gives us parameters and gives us kind of scenarios to look for in the stock. Because we're below the lower band, first off, I don't necessarily want to go short the stock, okay, because it's tremendously oversold. Okay, going long would be your best solution with a stop somewhere underneath this pivot low. And then once it broke the lower band, now you can move a stop up to around the lower band. Now, again, the target here to me would be back to the mid band. And you can see it's almost made its way back to the mid band. And we'll look at it. We'll see if it actually did take out the mid band. Here's another JBLU, not quite as crystal clear, but you can see how the ADX line peaked out, started to move down, and now it's moving back. The stock, of course, is starting to move back up. Here's another one. Now, this is probably a better example, though. You really can't see the ADX line here. But if I draw a line here, it probably looks something like that. So the line went up, peaked out, and started heading down. Bottom was roughly 84. Now the stock's over 100. So again, a nice little swing move. Let me see here. Oh, and here's Seagate. Now you can see on Seagate, same scenario. Okay. Peaked out, started to head down, kind of a rounded bottom here, and it's run from basically 30 to almost 50 in a couple of months. And then here's one more example, this Gentex, okay. Bottomed around 17, you can see ADX line heading up, peaked out, starts to head down. Here's a beautiful bullish engulfment right there. Stock ran from roughly 70 to almost 21. Had another little pullbacks run from 18 and roughly 18 and a half to almost 22. Now, the little nuance down here is this. When the stock made the new high here, notice how the ADX line had made a higher high. So that's confirming that this move should probably continue. But I think just looking at these, this is the chart setup I like. Obviously, reading the ADX line can be very beneficial, if you will. But again, the irritating thing for me right now is that there's not a whole heck of a lot of stocks that are setting up because of the overbought nature of the market. Quite frankly, I'd prefer a good pullback. All right, let me see. Any questions? That's what I wanted to cover. Again, that's my email if you want to email me directly. Let me see here. I'm going to continue to go over this because, quite frankly, that bottoming formation is probably the best I've seen. It's just really indicative, highly probable that a bottom in a stock has taken place. And again, these are just a few examples. All right, good. Well, look, I don't see any questions, so I'm probably going to close down for today. I know I went through this material pretty quickly, but you are privy to the PowerPoint, so if there are any individual questions, feel free to email me directly. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the week. Goodbye now.